I'm Mark Muncy, the author of Eerie, Florida and Freaky Florida. For nearly 30 years, I've collected myths, monsters, legends, and more ghost stories than you can imagine. Join me as we journey to some of the spookiest and craziest places on Earth that might just be in your own backyard. Welcome to Eerie Travels. Welcome back, travelers. Today we are going to visit a very unique town in North Florida. It's not quite Panhandle, but it kind of is. It's called Marianna, Florida. And this is one of the most historical towns in Florida, particularly North Florida, that you can, there's just so much going on there, paranormal, cryptids, all kinds of history, ghosts, you name it, it's all right there. It is the center hotspot for just some crazy locations and all well worth your legend trip. So we've got a lot to discuss here. So we'll start with probably one of the darkest locations in Florida history. And we'll go from there to one of the more historical locations, and then into a Civil War battle. And then finally we'll end up with a local expert there at a really cool place that you can go visit while you're there. So we will start right off the bat with a dark place. And for sensitive viewers, just warn you now, I'm going to try to be as gentle talking about this subject as I can, but it is a little tricky to talk about. And the place we're going to be talking about was known originally as the Florida School for Boys, but later it was known as the Dozier School for Boys. Now, what it started as was a detention school for problem children. Now, this was meant to be for the worst of the worst. It was built in 1911 and opened that same year, and it was supposed to house 500 students. And these would have been kids who committed crimes on other kids, like murder or rape, and they would be sent here to be rehabilitated. It was, when they were just too much for the local schools. Within a couple years, they had over 5,000 students there, or inmates. And as you can see, they had to cram them in to these tight locations. There was a church built across the street so that they could come and worship and have their services. And there's Arthur Dozier there meeting with some of the children. He was one of the first school superintendents. He is who the school is named after. Now, immediately after opening, there were already problems. As I said, overcrowding, and then, children were being put in rooms next to children who murdered other children. So right off the bat, signs of abuse, signs of struggles, definitely stuff worth investigating. But this was, early 1900s. And whenever the press would come, the boys would be trotted out to show off and look how great things were, and that they were learning cool things, and they were going on trips, and they were, they had a small zoo they built there that kept some alligators and some other animals. And they were taking classes, learning carpentry, learning skills, learning things that would rehabilitate them into society. But what happened was, shortly after there, students started not showing up, and kids were disappearing. Allegations of abuse started getting more rampant. Now, there was a famous fire there that killed a few of the students and several of the staff, and that was in the 1920s. And the school was still considered overcrowded. One of the governors of our state at that time came to inspect the school, and he could not believe the conditions the children were being kept in. But nothing happened. He didn't close the school. He just condemned it. Then, a short while later, it was forgotten. But what happened is the school stayed open for 100 years and was finally closed in 2011 after the financial situation in the state became where they couldn't keep it. It was fenced off and locked up. But Professor Kimmerly from USF decided to go up there to investigate some of the allegations she had heard that the staff were abusing the children. And some of these missing children may have been treated worse than we thought. And she was able to get to the boot hill at the school, and she found 31 markers of graves at the school. There were only 24 recorded deaths at the school. So who were these 7 other students? Or who was in these 7 other graves? Was it some of the staff that died in a fire? No, they were buried in town in Marianna. So as she got ground penetrating radar out there to figure out where these extra graves were, what they found was 55 bodies. Who were all the extra children? Well, the records at this school were spotty at best, and some would just say, no longer here, presumed escaped. And what we started hearing from the children, who were now grown men who had, gone through this place, they said many of the boys would be taken to an area called the White House. It was a small building that was built to keep solitary confinement originally. But what it really was where they would beat the children, and they would do terrible things to the kids. And kids say they would only know how many times they'd been whipped if the kid in the cell next to them kept count for them, because they would black out. One of the guards had a whip called Black Beauty that was a 10-foot whip, and it would hit kids in this solitary confinement room in the White House, and you would hear the tap, tap, crack as it hit the wall, as it hit the ceiling, and then came down. This is the White House today. It is a memorial for all the children who were hurt here. The state finally acknowledged it in 2008 of all the problems that were going on here. The school didn't close for 3 more years. They are bulldozing the school soon, but they are keeping the White House as a permanent monument to the history and the dark times that happened here. No one really knows how many victims there are of the Dozier School. It will be bulldozed soon. They are turning parts of it into facilities for adult learning so that they can rehabilitate adults into society. The state sheriff's office in that area has built an office over some of the old grounds. So while you have a chance, drive through Dozier on your way into Marianna and take a look and just get a little taste of that dark history. Now, there are ghosts reported there. There are sad things reported there. I think more pay your respects and move on. Now, a short bit later into town itself of Marianna, you will come upon one of the most iconic buildings in North Florida, and that is the Russ House. Now, the Russ House is built right on a main street in downtown Marianna, and it is a beautiful post-Civil War house and has that amazing veranda out front. It is now the home of the Historical Society for that county, and you can sit out there and just watch the town go by. And there is an amazing street corner right there that people come to visit quite often, and they'll take pictures up at the Russ House. Now, there are several spirits in the Russ House, not due to anything particularly happening in the Russ House itself, but the fact that they've brought in all these artifacts and strange items that are historical for the museum, but they seem to have spirits attached to them. And so many people take photos of that amazing looking house, they seem to catch odd shapes in the windows, which is why the Russ House is considered to be one of the most photographed haunted objects in the world, because it's such a beautiful place, and you examine those pictures, you don't know what you're going to see. Now, before the Russ House, as I said, it was a Civil War, post-Civil War house. It was built right after the Civil War. because right there where it stands was a battlefield. Not many Civil War battles took place in Florida, but this one definitely is one of the most memorable. It is called the Battle of Marianna, and it started right there on that street corner. Union soldiers were riding into town, and they fought a Confederate old guard, which was basically the elderly and the kids who couldn't, who were too young to fight and too old to fight, and they fought and defended the town. Now here was the reunion from that battle from 1927 of those that survived. Now they fought back hard against the Union cavalry that was coming into town. They fought through the whole town, starting where the Russ House is, and they continued on down the street. The house next door to the Russ House is still there, and famously was filled with bullet holes. And the mother who owned that house in the 1940s would give children a quarter for every time they'd fill a bullet hole in for her. And so the first floor looks really nice, but if you go there now, the second floor still has some bullet holes where the kids couldn't reach to fill in. Now they do reenact that battle every year, as you saw some photos thereof. And the battle kept waging on down to town till it crossed in front of St. Luke's Cathedral. Now, there was the last stand by the rebels in this churchyard, and the battle raged through the graveyard right outside. Now, what's amazing about this is when you go visit that graveyard, there are still musket ball holes in some of the graves from where the fighting took place. Now, the captain of the Union forces got the men to surrender, and he forced them to line up outside the church, but there was a lone sniper in the top of the church tower still shooting at the men. He eventually was able to surrender and come down himself, but not after taking out the captain of the Union Army. So the Confederates consider this a small victory, even though it was a terrible fight. The building across from St. Luke's also had some damage because it was the home of the Daughters of the Confederacy. So all the women who had their husbands off at war or their fathers off at war stayed in that building. And when they saw the fighting outside, they too began to open fire on the invading Union Army. What happens there is that the Union commanders said, if you do not stop shooting, we will open fire back. And the ladies stopped. But the Battle of Marianna is considered this great victory amongst the Civil War of the South, where in fact it was actually more of just a slow, methodical battle. Now there is a ghost story associated with this battle. It is said that at St. Luke's Church, that because the sniper would not go away, that the captain of the Union Army ordered the church set ablaze, and he lit the fire in the church. And when that happened, the priest locally said, I must save the Bible, the town's Bible. It has all our records, it has everything. So he rushed into the blaze, running into a burning church, salvaged the Bible. But as he ran out, he was engulfed in flames, saved the Bible, but lost his life. Now, his ghostly, flaming spirit is supposedly seen coming out of the church. But none of that is true. None of that happened. What is the flaming spirit that's seen there? No one really knows, but it has been documented several times. Now, the church itself stands in ruins now. Now, there was two St. Luke's. So this is the other St. Luke's. This one was destroyed by Hurricane Michael recently. It had already been damaged by Hurricane Irma. It had been long abandoned. And this is the one where they say the flaming ghost really is, and that it's just confused with that church in downtown Marianna. This is up on a little side road not too far away. And this church itself has several stories about it. And I believe what's happened is that ghostly story from the St. Luke's in the Civil War battle actually belongs to that church, because that St. Luke church, not St. Luke's, subtle difference, and in the same town easy to get confused. But the St. Luke Church, we believe, has the fire story because there was a fire there in the 1920s. And there a priest was burned and was sent to the hospital where he did die later of his wounds. Now, that makes a little more sense and doesn't tie into the Civil War story, but when you're talking Civil War battles, you're talking ghosts, things sometimes get a little transplanted. And that is why we do the investigations that we do. When we talk to Marianna, the people you need to talk to are Dale Cox of Two Egg TV. He is the local historian up there. He's written several books on the Battle of Marianna. He's written a book on the Dozier School, and he's written on some other things. Professor Kimmerly from USF, who is the lead investigator of all things Dozier. And then you also want to visit the White House organization online. And this is the White House boys. These are boys who survived the Dozier School. And this is their website where you can go and read stories about the boys who survived. It will give you nightmares on end of some of the things that they survived and their abuse. It is crazy the things they do, but they also take donations because they are still seeking legal actions against various entities. Now, Marianna does not like to talk about Dozier. They pretend like it doesn't exist. They're very happy that it is being bulldozed. I'm sure they're not 100% happy that the White House itself is staying there. Now, up next, it's just, I don't know how to go on from this, but I think the best thing to do is to talk to one of the experts up in Marianna. There's another great guy. This is a guy who will take you Bigfoot hunting. He will take you to caves. He will take you to some of the most interesting locations in the Panhandle. And I, of course, am talking about Connor Flynn of Bigfoot Anonymous himself. Now, Connor started a few years ago as a Bigfoot, just walking out, seeing what he could find up in the Panhandle. He became infatuated with a story called the Ocheesee Pond Wild Man, which was a story we'll get into on a future episode, where a skunk ape, or a Bigfoot, was actually captured and taken to the governor's office in Tallahassee. It's an amazing story, and a future episode of Eerie Travels will go a little more into detail on. But Connor himself has a wonderful game store up there called Retro to New, and he sells retro video games. They sell Dungeons and Dragons. They sell all the things that you could possibly want as a nerd like me. I mean, just look at that collection of NES and Atari cartridges, games, comics, the usual, and an amazing collection of art from local artists up there in the Panhandle area. The store itself is just outside of downtown Marianna and has, you know, a short distance from all these crazy locations. And, you know, you can't beat it. But Connor himself will tell you you need to go to the Bellamy Bridge. So let's take a short trip over to a little bit further outside of town. And this is the Bellamy Bridge. Now, the Bellamy Bridge is one of the few state parks that has a ghost story on its main page. And I think we've got some video of me there from 2015, and let's show that. So here we are for Eerie, Florida, being eaten alive by bugs. Hi, this is the famous, or infamous, Bellamy Bridge, considered by many to be the most haunted bridge in Florida. Lady Bellamy died here way back in the 1860s. Rumor has she died because her wedding dress was on fire, but truth be told, she died of malaria. Her son died a few months later, and then her husband committed suicide a little while after that from grief. So then she's seen out here in these creepy waters around this bridge, trying to find her husband. That's the story anyway. But it's a little disused trail. They're trying to restore it, so they do have a GoFundMe up. We'll link to it down here in the bottom of the video. Dale Cox, a historian in the area, is spearheading that.
and they're trying to make it accessible for everybody because the trail is very disused and very slippery, and lots of bugs, as you can see. So I can't imagine why there's orbs and other things appearing in pictures out here with all these bugs everywhere. But anyway, that's another spot for Eerie, Florida. So definitely a nice bridge, and there was a famous Indian battle here during the First Seminole War. Spanish settlers first forded here before the bridges were put up. This is actually the third bridge. There were 2 wooden bridges before that. And just another little piece of Florida history up in the Panhandle, just a little north of Marianna, with Dozier School and the Russ House. So a lot of haunted history up here. So we'll see you next time. The path to the Bellamy Bridge is a muddy path this time of year. And we still haven't even gotten to near where the riverbed you have to walk across. Watch your steps when you're going out here, and bring lots of bug spray because there's plenty of standing water.
I can't tell from this distance.
All right, well, we're going to leave you alone, buddy. Yeah, you go on off. Thanks.
So yeah, when you're at the Bellamy Bridge, make sure you watch out for the ghost, but mostly watch out for water moccasins and alligators, because it is the Panhandle, and you never know what you're going to find out there. And now the Bellamy Bridge story has a lot of holes in it because it ties into several ghost stories, one from South Carolina that follows the exact same story, and that family actually moved to Marianna. So that's why we believe that ghost story followed them there, and the bridge itself is probably not where the flaming bride is seen. However, there was a Civil War battle right on that bridge. There was also a Spanish battle with some of the natives there that is documented in De Soto's troop, Hernando de Soto's conquistador battles at the time that he kept track of. On top of that, the Bellamy Bridge has a song. It is one of the only state parks with a ghost story on its path. When we went this last time, the reason we didn't have more recent video is because it was flooded out. The Chipola River floods, and they have not rebuilt that bridge there, so you can't actually get across to the Bellamy Bridge sometimes. So always call ahead, always check ahead with the State Park Service to see if you can actually get to the Bellamy Bridge. And if you can go right up to it there. It is a beautiful bridge. It is an amazing sight. And the Chipola River goes right underneath it. We're back to Dozier. And that's just one of those crazy things. Now, Connor himself is one of the experts in that area, and he'll take you out there if you want. But let's let Connor introduce himself and say a little bit about him.
What's up, guys? It's Connor from Bigfoot Anonymous. I'm here at Retro to New Video Games, an awesome retro shop that we host Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, and sell pretty much everything that gets us all excited in this weird paranormal world. But I'm awesome to be linked up with Carrie and Mark, Eerie, Florida, Eerie swamps. It all comes together. And right here, we're surrounded by a lot of scary things. We have Bellamy Bridge, the Dozier School, the Garden of Eden, and the skunk ape creature that was captured in 1874 in Ocheesee Pond. And just today, even some descendants of the guys that captured the creature came in. So crazy timing. It all aligns with the stars. What a magical time. When you spread your wings, the world gets a little smaller.
Perfect. Well, tell us a little bit about the shop. How long has it been here?
Yeah, it's been here for 5 years. The owner is Robert James. He started out on eBay and selling out of his back car. But then, it all piles up. He gets traded some stacks of games for some high-end collectibles, and he had to upgrade. And this store is just truly magical because in the black-white world, we have some color, we have some hope, and everything is going commercial and just bland, and we just want to remain strong and free. And we have a place that people can come and have open conversations and be surrounded by awesome colors and murals and just nostalgic times. It doesn't get better.
And Marianna, just full of history, like you said, Civil War battles. I mean, this is everything. So definitely, when you're in the area, come on by, gang. And thanks so much, Connor, for having us.
Thank you for coming through, and beware of below your feet. There's caves all through here, all the way to the courthouse. So there's a good chance something's right below. It's awesome.
We were just at the Devil's Millhopper, so watch out for sinkholes.
Oh yeah.
So thanks again to Connor for letting us go to Retro to Cool, and he took us to a couple more sites that we'll be showing you in a future video and future episodes. And now, when you do go to Marianna, remember this is a bustling town. Seek out an expert like Connor or someone else in the area to show you around. Reach out to Dale Cox. He has some recommendations as well. Or you can reach out to us at Eerie Travels, and we're happy to give you some recommendations. If you do go to the Dozier School, the buildings are not open for public. They are open because the doors are open and the windows are smashed out. Do not go in there. You're right next to the new sheriff's department. You don't want to be there anyway. You can reach out for permission to go into the buildings, but they are in bad shape because 2 hurricanes have gone through there since they've been abandoned, and they are not in quality condition. So only a couple of the buildings do they allow actual visitors to walk through. But definitely reach out ahead to the state of Florida or Marianna City, and they might let you go through a couple of the buildings. They do not allow paranormal investigations at night at any of the properties because they're not safe. Now, if you go to the Bellamy Bridge as well, wear some nice walking boots. It is definitely muddy and slippery, and you might still find some fun ghosts. So, as always, you can follow us on Eerie Travels at eerietravels.com or eerieflorida.com, and you can read more about Marianna in all of our books. Eerie, Florida, we talk about the Bellamy Bridge. In Freaky, Florida, we talk about the caves up there, and in Creepy, Florida, we talk about the ghosts. So we'll see you next time.